This is going to be part 4 of my series about Jesus the man. And this one is going to talk about his emotional depth and compassion and how he was able to have feelings and be deeply moved. He had emotions, he felt emotions, and he was moved when others expressed emotions. It was those emotions that moved him. He was moved by his emotions and the emotions of others in order to act in certain ways. So I want to talk about John chapter 11 with Lazarus and that miracle he worked. I'm going to start in verse 20, about when Martha hears that he's approaching. Martha therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him, but Mary stayed at the house. Martha then said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world." Verse 28, when she had said this, she went away and called Mary, her sister, saying, "Secretly, the teacher is here and calling for you." So it shows kind of Martha where she's at with her confession of Christ and the extent to which she believes him. To his face, she says to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world." So this is what she confesses to Jesus in his face. But when she goes to Mary and she refers to Jesus, she went away and called Mary, her sister, saying, "Secretly," she refers to him as the teacher. The teacher is here and calling for you. To Jesus' face, she gives him all of these titles. But in the presence of others, when Jesus is not around, she refers to him as the teacher. And it just shows how her words, it's like flattery, there's deception behind them, and they're just kind of empty. And there's an extent where she doesn't actually believe those things about Jesus in its fullness. But Mary, verse 29, and when she heard it, she got up quickly and was coming to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house and consoling her, when they saw that Mary got up quickly and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. So these Jews first came to her house. It says Jews came to console Martha and Mary when their brother had died. I'll have to find it. So these Jews came to console Mary when she was weeping for her brother. So when Mary got up and left, the Jews got up and left and followed her, because it's she's the one we're supposed to console. She's weeping. Okay, she's going to go to the tomb to weep there. Okay, well, we need to follow her, because they're motivated by consoling Mary. Because they love Mary, they're following Mary. And that's why they follow her to the tomb. Verse 32, when Mary came to where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." It's the same language that Martha said. So in verse 21, Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." And verse 32, It's the same thing that Mary said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. It's the same words. The only difference is that Mary was weeping and Martha wasn't. So verse 33, when Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled. So it wasn't just the words and the call and the plea and Martha entreating him with the right words, or even Mary entreating him with the right words. It was when he saw her weeping. She was emotional. When he saw her emotions, and the Jews also weeping, he became deeply moved in spirit and was troubled. It's like, because he loved Mary, there's a union there. So when like the Bible says to weep with those who weep, it's like he actually loved Mary, and seeing her weeping, that moved him to be in the same like state of being. Same thing with the Jews. They loved Mary. So when Mary was weeping over her brother, it's like, because they love her, they share that same like empathy, that connection, that bond. And when she's crying, it makes them cry. It's natural. It's not performative. It's like, oh, I'm weeping because I'm supposed to. It's not like out of obligation or a necessity. It's genuine. And their love for Mary was sincere. Their emotions were sincere. So when Mary wept, they were also sincerely and deeply moved to weep also. Like, they were actually fulfilling the commandment to weep with those who weep, as opposed to just putting on this these shallow emotions and this performative display of weeping to give the impression that they love Mary and that they care for her, or that they love Lazarus. Verse 33, when Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? And this is what moves him to act. This is what moves him to want to raise Lazarus. He knew that he was going to raise Lazarus. He knew that God had appointed him to that work, but this is what gave him the power to do that, being moved, deeply moved in spirit, and was troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come see. Verse 35, Jesus wept. So the Jews were saying, see how he loved him. And it's true, Jesus did love Lazarus, and he loved Martha, and he loved Mary. It says that earlier. But his weeping wasn't because he loved Lazarus, it was because he loved Mary, and Mary was weeping, and that deeply moved him to weep also. Verse 37, but some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man also from dying? So Jesus, again, being deeply moved within, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, remove the stone. Martha, the sister of the deceased, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be a stench, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So he's like calling out her unbelief. Like earlier in verse 27, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. It's like he says, your brother will rise again. If you believe in me, these things will take place. And she's like, I believed. But when he says, remove the stone, Martha intercedes. She's like, Lord, by this time there will be a stench. He has been dead 4 days. Like, it shows that she wasn't as believing as she thought she was. And Jesus, brings that to her attention. Did I not say that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they removed the stone. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you have always heard me, but because of the people standing around, I said it, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." The man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with a cloth. Jesus said to him, "Unbind him and let him go." And then verse 45, therefore many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw what he had done believed in him. So it's like these Jews were able to, they ended up believing in him. And the only reason that they were able to believe in him is because they saw this sign and this miracle that Jesus performed. And the only reason that they saw this sign and miracle that Jesus performed is because they were following Mary. They were there because they wanted to console Mary. And it's like, because these Jews had genuine empathy and compassion over Mary, and they were seeking her out, wanting to console her, that's why they came to the house. That's why they, when she left the house, they followed her from the house to the tomb. These Jews who had emotions, had a heart, had feelings, had depth of their emotions, and the emotions of other women, and because these Jews were moved by the emotions of other women, eventually that led them to be able to witness this miracle that Jesus performs and come to belief in him. There's like two ditches to teachings on emotions and feelings and being moved by your emotions and self-control. I've heard it to where it's like so overly drawn out, where it's like to feel is sin. To like weep over your sufferings, that's a sin. To be moved by your emotions, that's a sin. You're being moved by your emotions. You're not being moved by reason. And there's two ditches, and I've just heard it to where it's overly drawn out, to where if your emotions move you to act because you're hurt or because you're righteously indignant, and typically it's only towards women. If a man has emotions that move him to act, he's passionate. If a woman does it, it's like she's emotional. And yeah, there are people who are emotionally manipulative, and Jesus figures that out. It's like when he goes to heal the girl that died, the official Jairus, when his daughter died, and he goes in to heal her or raise her from the dead, and he says that she's not dead, she's only sleeping. And there were people there that were like mourning and lamenting and making a great commotion over her death. And it's like when he said this, they were then moved to laughter. It's like if you could so quickly transition from mourning and lamenting over a girl having died to laughter over this comment that Jesus made, saying like, she's not dead, she's only sleeping. It just shows how shallow your emotions are. Like if there was a young girl that died that I loved, and I was weeping and lamenting over her at her funeral, and someone came in, even if they said some stupid comment like, she's not dead, she's only sleeping, I don't even know if I would hear it, or it just might go in one ear, out the other. But for me to hear it and then transition over to laughter and mockery at the person who said that, it just shows how like that would have been performative if you're there at a funeral like weeping and lamenting, and then you can so easily transition to laughter and mockery at a comment someone makes that you don't even understand. So yeah, people are emotionally manipulative. They can put on a show, they can put on a performance. That's why Matthew calls them flute players. It's just performative, They're trying to get you to dance. We played the flute for you and you didn't dance. It's this that they're, especially with Christians that are empathetic, people can come crying and get you to move, get you to act, get them to help. So there is emotionally manipulative people. But I think Jesus knows the difference, and sometimes it takes time for people to be able to discern genuine emotions and what's false, especially in sermons. Some people are so emotionally manipulative in sermons, and typically when you're in it, you don't perceive it. You know, you're just being manipulative. You're being manipulated and you're being deceived, and you can't recognize what's happening to you. But once you know the tricks, and once you're out of it and you go back and listen, and it's like you understand the behavior, you understand the tactics. It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. And some of these pastors, it's like they get you to a certain point, and then their voice cracks on cue, and then it's like, but Jesus died for us. It's like this, they have it worked out to a T, and it's like they're great flute players. They know how to move a crowd. But then, yeah, you can also recognize genuine preachers that when they're preaching, and it's like, you know that they're deeply moved, that what they're saying is from conviction, and you see the emotions build. It's just not something they turn on at the flip of a switch to move your hearts, but you can hear it. You can hear the emotions building. You can hear that it's coming from a place of conviction. You can tell when they're actually deeply moved by the things that they're saying, and it's not just a performative thing so that they can be known for being mighty in word or being this great passionate preacher. I mean, I've been fooled a lot. So maybe even some of the preachers that I hear that I think are genuine, I've been fooled a lot, so who knows. But I think for the most part, I can starting to discern more who's genuine. And sometimes genuine preachers fall into the trap where it's like they use, fake emotions because they think it'll be helpful to move the other person, and it's still like fake. So I would say, like, regardless of your intentions and motives, even if it is for good, if the emotions aren't there, don't fake it. Just have it be real. And then at the end of Luke, in 23, in Luke in chapter 23, starting in 26. When they led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, coming in from the country, and placed on him the cross to carry behind Jesus. And following him was a large crowd of people, and of women who were mourning and lamenting him. So you have a large crowd and of women. So the women are distinct. The women were mourning and lamenting him, is how I read it. Verse 28, but Jesus, turning to them, said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, stop weeping for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children." So he's turning to this group of women that are weeping for him, and he commands them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, stop weeping for me. Stop crying over the suffering that I'm about to go endure on the cross, this physical suffering that I'm about to endure. Stop weeping for me, but weep for yourselves." That's a commandment from Jesus. Weep for yourselves and for your children. Why? Verse 29, for behold, the days are coming when they will say, blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed. So the days are coming when they will say, and I think they is typically men. And they'll say, blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bore and the breasts that never nursed. Like, they will value and praise women and consider women to be blessed basically because of their bodies. The ones that are barren, that haven't had children, the wombs that never bore, the ones that don't have stretch marks, the ones that don't have maternity weight, and the breasts that never nursed, you know. The women that are blessed are the ones that haven't born children, the ones that have a physical figure of someone who's barren, who has never born children, who has never nursed children, and whose bodies haven't suffered the decay and the sacrifice that naturally results from going through that process. The men will say, blessed are those women. Verse 30, then they will begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. For if they do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry? I think the tree is green. What happens, I think it has to, in reference to the fig tree that Jesus comes across, and he sees that the leaves are green, but it's not bearing fruit. And then he curses the fig tree, and then it shrivels up. So I think the fig tree is kind of like a metaphor towards like men. I would say fig trees are representative of men, and vines and grapes are representative of women. So when he's talking about when the tree is green, I think he's talking about men, and basically saying like the men right now, they have leaves, the tree is green, but they're not bearing fruit. And if they do these things when the tree is green, what's going to happen when it's dry? And Jesus just cursed the fig tree, and he knows that the condition of men is going to only suffer more decay. So that's why he's telling women, like, don't weep for me, weep for yourself, because the suffering that you're going to endure is going to be greater than the suffering that I'm about to endure on the cross, because of men who don't have the Spirit. They don't have any spiritual life in them. They don't have leaves. Some, I don't know. Jesus speaks of it generally with women versus men, so that's why I'm speaking generally of women and men. But yeah, he validates women's emotions. Well, he invalidates in the sense that these women were weeping for Jesus, and he invalidates that emotion where it says, stop weeping for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. So he's like, your tears would be better spent crying for yourselves and crying for your children, because how men will view you, the suffering that you're going to endure, and the treatment that you're going to receive by men who value you as just an object to satisfy their lust and their cravings. What you are going to endure from those men is going to be suffering far greater than what I'm about to receive physically on the cross in my flesh. Therefore, weep for yourselves and for your children. For women to weep over the suffering that they receive from men or their husbands or men in leadership and authority over them. It's not complaining, it's not grumbling, it's not selfishness, it's not having a pity party for themselves. They're not emotional, it's not they're being too sensitive. Jesus commands them, weep for yourselves. It's like weeping is the obvious fruit of it's like the response that it's the natural response over the suffering that you're going to receive, so you should weep for yourselves. And if you don't, then that's why when I say, I tell people like certain things are demonic, and they're like, Rebecca, that's demonic. Why are you saying it? Well, it's because it trains you to not to feel, you know? People, they hurt you in certain ways. They are emotionally abusive towards you, spiritually abusive towards you, to where it's, and then they tell you you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, you don't have self-control, you're being moved by your emotions. It's basically cultivating you to be like a psychopath, to not feel, to not have emotions, to be numb. You know, when they make your response the problem, that's manipulation. When people are cruel and disrespectful and they mistreat you, and that produces an emotional response because of the hurt and the emotional pain and the spiritual pain, it's like, well, let's look at your actions that cause this response. But I think what I've experienced is, it's like, no, the focus is always on the response, not their actions that led to the response. And then when I was reading Luke, I'm like, Jesus said that. That's amazing. I haven't heard any preacher preach on that. I haven't heard many preachers. I'm sure if I went on Sermon Audio, I could look, and maybe there'd be someone that says that. But yeah, part 4 of why Jesus is the man is his emotional depth and capacity to be deeply moved in his spirit and his emotional soul, and be moved by the emotions of others. To see a woman weeping and be moved by that, and the Jews to be moved by Mary weeping over Lazarus, instead of saying, oh, women are so dumb for having emotions, we're so emotional while men are logical. Again, to not be emotional is to be a psychopath. So start feeling. Men, stop stifling your emotions. I mean, maybe you could stifle some emotions like anger, but yeah, there's two ditches, you know. Yeah, women can be too emotional and too sensitive and like emotionally immature, to where it's like they do like cry at the drop of a hat. But First Peter says that men are to dwell with their wives in understanding. So however your wife is constituted, if she is like really emotional or sensitive, it's like, that's your wife. That's how the Lord has shaped and formed her heart currently. And you're to dwell with that body and soul with understanding. Your job isn't to tell her she's too emotional, she's too sensitive. It's to understand her and dwell with her and be considerate of that. Be considerate of her needs, her emotional needs, her spiritual needs, just as she is considerate of your physical needs, meeting those. I just feel like the focus has always been on one and not the other. So that's why when I read the Gospels and I see things like that, with Jesus and his emotions and how he responded to the emotions of women, it's like he's of no other. He's the only one. And like in, I think it's Revelation, when they, it's like bring out the standard to measure its length and width. Like they start measuring the temple. And it's like, well, Jesus is the temple. And I think in Zechariah, it talks about Zerubbabel. It's like the plumb line is in the hand of Zerubbabel, which is like a tool for measuring depth. It's like the emotional depth of Jesus. That's what I want to measure. That's what I would be interested in. Like in his second coming of the temple, when Jesus is here and they're measuring the length and width and height of the soul, his heart, his mind. I want to measure the emotional depth of that man. What's the depth, and how does that compare with other men today, and my own, emotional depth and capacity to love and weep and mourn for others. Yeah.